Actually, Mike, it's the Holy China.
You can look at anthology as the Swiss army knife of cymbals.
If you got an idea, you know, in your head, then they can actually make it, which was like, oh my goodness.
I have to say I'm obsessed with my entire line of evolution and legacy cymbals that I helped design with Mark Love at Sabian.
I always think of this ride that we started when I visited the Sabian factory in Medukvik, New Brunswick.
You can't discuss the history of the Sabian Cymbal Company without going back to long before the company was founded in 1981. The founder, Robert Zildjian, had planted the seeds for his company either by brilliant foresight or just by luck, all the way back in the late 1960s. I have a special guest today, Sabian artist and owner of Unleashed Drum Studios in Lake Balboa, California, Blake Pauslon. He is my friend and mentor of all things drums, recording and mixing. If you're interested in contacting him for the same, his website is listed here and will be linked in the description. Blake will be demoing some of his favorite Sabian cymbals after we go through the company history and then start discussing some of their more popular series and models. Robert Zildjian was the son of Avitus Zildjian III, the younger brother of Armand Zildjian, and was a driving force for the Avitus Zildjian Company. It was Robert who managed to negotiate the purchase of the K. Zildjian factory in Turkey. This was a pivotal transaction for the company. To understand more about this, you can go back and watch my video on the Zildjian family history. I will link it in the description. In the late 1960s, there were tariffs in place between the United States and Europe, and Robert approached his father with the idea to build a factory in his favorite vacation spot, Medukvik, New Brunswick, Canada, where he had gotten to know and respect the locals for their ingenuity and their work ethic. He described them as jack-of-all-trades type people, who were good with their hands and who could easily be taught the cymbal-making trade. By exporting from Canada, they would avoid paying the high tariffs that existed at the time between the US and Europe and other British Commonwealth countries, such as Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. The domestic Canadian market was also substantial and was a huge added bonus. His father agreed initially, but later changed his mind before the factory was operational, but after Robert had laid out all the funds for the investment. The factory moved forward, but Robert must have felt uneasy about the sudden change of heart because he had his father sign an agreement allowing him to purchase the factory and all the equipment back from him in the future if needed for the cost of building it. This was the only time that he ever asked his father to put anything in writing, and this agreement would later prove to be the key in Robert being able to establish Sabian years later. The new factory was ready to go by 1968 and was run under the name ASCO, an acronym for the Avitus Zildjian Company. And the workers there were mentored by the cymbal smiths at the Zildjian factory in Quincy, Massachusetts, but eventually had a capable architect of their own in Nort Hargrove, who was taught by Robert Zildjian and who took cymbal making to the next level. ASCO originally produced a less expensive line of cymbals called Zilkos, but they also finished some of the A. Zildjian cymbals, which were the only ones being made in the US at the time. By 1972, and as the demand skyrocketed for their cymbals, Zildjian moved into a larger facility in Norwell, Massachusetts, and concentrated on making the fastest moving products in their line, such as the new beat hi-hats and medium rides. They left the more labor and time-intensive cymbals, such as China Swish Pangs, extra thins, and extra heavy cymbals for the folks at the Medukvik factory. Over time, making these more difficult cymbals added to the skill level of the workers at ASCO. By 1976, Zildjian was getting ready to shut down the factory in Turkey, where they had been making all the fully hand-hammered Ks, and brought some of their master cymbal smiths over to the ASCO factory to teach the workers there the traditional hand-hammering techniques that were used exclusively for the making of Zildjian Ks. By this time, the A. Zildjians incorporated a machine hammering process and differed substantially from the traditional Turkish cymbals. The artisans that came over from Turkey included Karapi Zildjian, the grandson of Karapi Zildjian, and his two sons, Michael and Gabriel. And before long, they added the Canadian K to the lineup of the cymbals coming out of the ASCO factory. It is important to mention that although the cymbal smiths at the ASCO were making great cymbals and were capable of making the most complicated lines, the ASCO factory did not have a melting room and instead made their cymbals from castings brought up from the US factory. When their father passed away in 1979, Robert and his brother Armand ran Zildjian together for a bit, but soon their relationship fell apart, and as the younger sibling, Robert found himself as minority shareholder. And so in 1981, he left, but managed to acquire the ASCO factory as part of the final settlement. Some of the additional terms were that he could not use the name Zildjian or any reference to it, and he could not sell in the US for a full year. He adopted the name Sabian after a discussion with his wife Willie by taking the first two letters of his children's first names, Sally, Billy, and Andy. They added a melting room by the start of 1982 and started selling domestically in Canada and to Europe and other parts of the world. And by 1983, Sabian began selling to the United States and became a major competitor to both Zildjian and the other big player at the time, Paiste. They started with only two main series of cymbals and quickly added various lines under each. The AA, automatic anvil. You can look at this line as comparable to the Zildjian A's in that it's pressed into its general form and then machine hammered into its final shape. It can be described as bright and vintage sounding. HH for hand hammered, a truly hand hammered cymbal crafted in the Turkish tradition of making cymbals. It's described as dark and moody. It starts off flat and is hand hammered on an anvil into its final shape. Sabian will release the HH remastered line in 2016 to include even more hammering than the original offering. Over the years, Sabian has collaborated with a long list of professional drummers and has added so many lines and models to their entire catalog, and it can be a bit overwhelming to try to navigate it. In order to keep this video concise, I will quickly go through only a few of the high-end series that Sabian currently lists on their website. But at the end of the video, I will provide a list and timeline of many more of their products and releases. The AAX series came out in 1993, a continuation of the AA, but with a completely new proprietary hammering technique and pinpoint lathing, a process that yields smaller ridges and a more focused sound with greater dynamic range. The AAX hammer marks are larger, which allows the cymbal to stay at the same EQ at different volumes. They describe it as modern and bright. The HHX came out in 2001. Related to the HH series, the HHX incorporates larger peen hammering techniques and a tighter lathing. They are known for having the dark tonality of a vintage cymbal while retaining the focus, clarity, and projection associated with modern cymbals. They also use a hand-guided machine with 4 to 5 different peens. Some of the lines that fall under this series include the Evolution, which was a 2002 release and a collaboration with Dave Weckl, the Legacy, a 2006 release and also a Dave Weckl collaboration. The HHX Complex. These came out in 2019 and are a huge hit. This is a line of dark cymbals that are made with a combination of HH and HHX hammering and include a hand-hammered raw bell. Anthology. As of this video, this line is Sabian's newest offering and are designed in collaboration with Jojo Mayer to offer the full spectrum of a ride and crash in the same cymbal. Okay, moving from the HHX series. In 2004, they came out with the Paragon series. This is a collection of cymbals produced in collaboration with Neil Peart.
It's just Peart.
According to Sabian, this series uses AA hammering and a mix of sound-defining features from the AA, AAX, and HH series. The Artisan series was released in 2005 and is the most labor-intensive series in the lineup and combines both hand and machine hammering. It's hand-hammered, lathed, machine hammered, and then finished. The complete list of Sabian's catalog would be pretty difficult for me to put together, but here's a list and timeline that I took from a video hosted by Mark Love of Sabian and recorded on December 15, 2022. You can find this video on Sabian's YouTube channel, but I will also include it as a link in the description.
We're here today with Meinl Teague. Sally and John's daughter, so another generation of family in the business. Also Randy Ross, my partner in product development. So we're here to answer some of your questions today. First of all, we'd just like to thank everyone for joining and talk a little bit about this year. Is very special for us. This is our 40th year in business since 1982, and there's a lot of product and a lot of sonic water under the bridge, if you will. So I was just quickly going to run through some of the highlights of the last 40 years. And I've been lucky enough to be here for all of those. So I've seen a lot of product development and a lot of innovation through those years. But starting out in '82, we just had the basic AA and HH series, and very few additions for the next few years as the brand began to be known out there, and we started to grow. 1986.
Robert Zildjian's youngest son, Andy, has been running Sabian since 1996. If you asked him, he'd probably tell you that Sabian's continued success is owed to their dedication to working with and learning from musicians, famous or not, and to try anything to push the boundaries of cymbal making. But above all, to the talent of all the people who work there, both past and present. With a special shout out to his team of master artisans such as Dwight Grant and Charlie Brown, who recently retired, and master product specialists and architects like Nort Hargrove and Mark Love, who are relentless in their pursuit of innovation. And to the new generation of innovators like Randy Ross, who has been working closely with Mark Love to take Sabian into the future cymbal making. According to Randy, Sabian has releases planned out through the end of 2024 and plan on releasing an entirely new series of cymbals by the end of this year, 2023. No details are available as of the recording of this video, but we can look forward to getting something soon. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up. And as always, I appreciate all your thoughts and comments. Thank you so much for watching.